First question is, what was the spark that led you to build Sherlock? What is the eureka moment?
I think it was a combination of things, actually. It wasn't one of those like, yeah, like it was something that was building up, right? So, first of all, I guess this is my third startup, and my last startup was very, very different. It was a consulting firm, and we were self-funded, and but like a typical organization, we went through a period where you were rapidly scaling up. And you're also slightly changing the DNA of your business, right? So
Mm-mm.
we were not just we were a consultancy firm. We were being brought the banks were our clients, and we were also then developing our own technology platform. And it was during this period where, and you see it over and over again. We were scaling very rapidly, and you go from having a fairly small and contained team where everybody knows what they're doing. You can count on a certain pattern of working to, you go from 12 people very quickly to 25, and then we went very, very quickly to 75 with additional clients and with an additional like product line, essentially. And as the business owner, you are so busy supporting this scale and all the activity that comes with it, um, that there's a few fundamental, stop signs or amber lights that you kind of sped through and didn't really keep an eye out on. And for us, it was keeping an eye on the cash, right? At the time, as we were scaling rapidly, we our biggest clients were, we went from, God, I don't even know how it was. We had our monthly management accounting meeting with our accountants. Because again, we went from, 12 people where you're a CFO or finance director is not a key person of your team. So you
Mm.
outsource that. But it's an irregular meeting, right? And back in the day, we used to forecast and plan, like, and review the plans maybe once every 6 months or every 3 months, right?
Ooh, okay.
Because you can rely on pretty steady, what doesn't really change that much, right? But as you're
Mm.
scaling, it's something that you suddenly wake up and you're like, crap, I need to be reviewing this daily or once a week. Because every tiny little metric has that knock-on impact. So we had our meeting with our accountants, and suddenly they're like, oh, by the way, you've only got 2 weeks of cash left. And it was a horrible wake up moment. And the kind that makes your ears ringing, because you're sat there going, I am personally responsible for 75 people's livelihoods. Um, and these guys have just promised them to come over and start working with us. And actually, it's just as your business is growing. So, the beginning of your dreams are starting to materialize. And cash is blood, right? If you don't have blood, like, you're suddenly done, right?
Mm.
Um, and it was one of those where I was like, hold on, I thought I had been planning. I thought I had been proactive. We had a couple million quid in the bank the month before. So we went from, very cash rich to suddenly not. And it was I remember sitting there with the accountants going, it would have been nice if you guys had dropped me an email or sent me a text to let me know that this was happening. So I could have done something about it like 2 weeks ago. So I at least would have had four weeks to do something about it.
Yeah.
Um, and that was my wake up moment. And of course, you
Yeah.
then go and try. You're an entrepreneur. You're like, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call my bank. Can I get some rolling credit facilities? Are there any like debt products I can tap into? In fact, we had just started to do a fundraise because we were developing the technology. I'm like, maybe I can talk to some of my investors to kind of, come in and put their money and deposit it earlier than we expected. And of course, then, and we were talking to the bank, and that's when you realize the world is not really built for small businesses. Because then they were like, of course, we will get you a loan. You're a great customer. You're super profitable. But please send us your PDFs of the last, 3 years of your registered accounts. And here's a 20 some odd page application form for you to fill in. And I'm sat there going, hold on a second, you have all my data. I've had an account for 6 years. Like, what is going on? You know what comes in and what goes out. Um, and again, it's like, I don't really have time for this. And actually, then the products, for them to go through their journey was going to take 6 weeks. So you're like,
Okay.
that's 4 weeks too late. And it was that horrible situation that I kind of took away. And I remember thinking, I wish somebody would do something about this, but it wasn't in my space. So you put it in your back
Mm.
pocket, and then you don't really think about it. We ended up dealing with it because we were in a very privileged position to work for the decision makers in the banks. And you pick up the phone and you're like, I'm going to have to pull out all my guys. I'm about to go bust because you guys haven't paid us, right? Um, so yeah, took that away. And then my second kind of like aha moment happened when I was walking down the road in Croydon. And I've lived in Croydon for, over 2 decades. And I'm looking around and I'm like, we moved to this area because it was like it had great shopping, it had great small businesses. There were a lot of like, innovative little companies that were based here. Um, and I'm walking around and I'm like, oh, okay, my daughter wanted to get work experience. And what I'm looking around at is suddenly a dead high street. And, you're like, okay, maybe we can go to like the local industrial park. There used to be some small manufacturers there. And then the local industrial park is like a ghost town. And you're just kind of like getting your head out of the sand, looking around, going, everything is dead around here. And then you realize that, this is the reason why your local town has gotten such a bad reputation because the kids have nothing to do. The rate of
Mm.
unemployment is so high. You're looking at the level of homelessness around, and the level of crime, and it's a social failure. Like the entire social structure has suddenly failed. But because you've been so busy building your business, you didn't take the time to take a deep breath and look around, right? And I remember thinking to myself, we can't leave this to the government. Like, this is a business case, this is a
Mm.
commercial thing. And actually, you start thinking like a business person and saying, there's a lot of foot traffic. Croydon is the gateway into like the south of England and the southeast of England in particular.
Mm.
Westfield was supposed to be coming over here, and we know that it had a few knocks because of the different financial crises, but like the people are still in the city. Like, what's going on, right? Um, and it was around that time when I had sold, well, I was in the process of selling Fire Drake. And I'm a fixer. So I'm walking around the high street. I'm sitting there thinking, this isn't working for me. And I thought, oh, but I'm a banker. There's nothing I can do about it. And then I just thought, you know what? Actually, no, I'm going to stop uh, expecting others to fix all the whole wider
Mm.
problems. And I'm like, I am a business person. And actually, I remember the experience with Fire Drake, and I thought, let me go and investigate, what is the reason why all of these shops have shut down and all of the little manufacturing companies have shut down. Um, so I started looking into it, and again, it's the trend around cash is king. Businesses don't manage their cash flow. It's been one economic disaster after another. It adds up. Um, and I thought again, it's a financial case. So when I sold Fire Drake, I had already kind of put together the dots around, well, wouldn't it be great if when I had been in trouble with my last business, I had received that text message from my accountants. I had received an email from my bank saying, hey, we noticed that your expected bank balance was below where you had forecast it to be. Um, you need to ring your customers. They owe you money. Like, do something about it, right? Um, and it was this concierge kind of service that I thought, if somebody had given me the heads up, I would have had time to do something about it. And yeah, so yeah, it was a combination of, okay, I want this concierge service, this intelligent personal assistant that is
Mm.
looking at my day-to-day activities of my business. And even back then, because of the situation with terrorism activity, we had always expected that there would be an incident type of event that could come and change the entire, structure of how you manage your business. We already knew that climate change was going to start changing supply chains. We already knew that the developing landscape of sourcing materials was getting more and more complicated for businesses, right? And
Mm.
again, in the UK, it's like, the brain drain has been happening for, a good 7 to 8 years. Um, this was already the case that some of us were already going to the government and saying, you need to do something about this, right? So I guess
Mm.
my background is in predictive analytics. I identify patterns that maybe other people don't see. And I was already kind of sitting there going, there's all these patterns, things are aligning. Some of them are a cause of the butterfly effect, something happening in a far corner of somewhere else in the world, but it has a knock-on impact, right? And something has been like developing for years and it's going to come to a head. And all I could see were like all of these things kind of, increasing in terms of the frequency and the urgency. And again, I was like, we need to be able to just text or email those small businesses that there is a risk or have a look at something more deeply. And this is, to give them just enough time. Time is the most valuable resource. Um, because entrepreneurs and business owners are just natural troubleshooters,
Mm.
right? And if we give them enough time, then they can do something about it. And then, their business doesn't become an at-risk business. And then we don't have all the social collapse and the social structure.
Mm.
So I guess it was one of those like combinations. I also needed to get my head in the right space, exit one business, and it was really tough exiting my last business. It took a way longer than I had hoped. Um, and then being able to start something afresh. But once I kind of had picked up all the little things that I wanted to connect, it was a eureka moment. Like I woke up one morning and I was like, okay, this is what we need to do. And then it was one of those things where sit down with a blank sheet of paper and say, this is massive, right? When you're on a mission to change something that feeds to your fundamental like well-being, your community, your society, your country, you're looking at what like to call an onion type of
Yeah.
proposition. It has so many different layers. um, but again, this has been my job in banking, right? For 2 decades, my job was always to look for the 10,000 things that needed to be done to deliver one big piece of change and transformation. And how all the little cogs and parts of the engine would be connected and to make sure that they all flowed in the same way. Um, and you realize that, because it's so big, you need a few different individuals who are amazing at what they do to come in and help you work that through.